The woolly mammoth company just unleashed actual white wolves from the Ice Age? Hold up. Behind a 9-foot fence somewhere in America roam 3 stark white wolves that startup Colossal Biosciences claims are the reborn version of dire wolves, creatures that vanished 13,000 years ago. The same company promising to resurrect woolly mammoths now says they've actually brought an extinct species back to life. But scientists are calling BS. Pure hype is scam. Elephantine fantasies. Are these really the fierce predators from Game of Thrones? Or just genetically modified gray wolves with a fancy marketing campaign? And with a $10 billion valuation and Hollywood connections, is this groundbreaking science or just expensive entertainment? While the company locks these wolves away in a secret location, let's uncover what's really happening behind those high-security fences and whether we should be celebrating or concerned. Before we dive into the controversy, let's get our facts straight. Dire wolves weren't just fictional beasts from Game of Thrones. They were very real predators that roamed North America until about 13,000 years ago. These weren't just big bad wolves. They were large, big-jawed canines whose remains have been discovered in places like the La Brea tar pits in California, where over 400 skulls have been recovered. Colossal Biosciences, founded by software entrepreneur Ben Lamb in 2021, started with an ambitious mission to resurrect the woolly mammoth after Lamb visited Harvard geneticist George Church. What began as a far-out theoretical project has somehow attracted over $400 million in investment, boosting the company to a reported $10 billion valuation and making Lamb a paper billionaire. Since then, Colossal has announced plans to resurrect the thylacine Tasmanian tiger, the dodo bird, and even the Steller sea cow. But here's the thing. Despite all the headlines and funding, none of these projects had actually produced a living animal with ancient genes, until now, supposedly. The white wolves, 2 males named Romulus and Remus, and a female named Khaleesi, are Colossal's first claim of an actual de-extinction success. Each animal reportedly carries 20 genetic changes across 14 genes designed to make them larger, alter their facial features, and give them that dramatic Snow White appearance. But are 20 genetic changes enough to resurrect a species that diverged from modern wolves millions of years ago? That's where the scientific community is raising their eyebrows and their voices. So how exactly did Colossal attempt to bring dire wolves back? It's a fascinating blend of ancient DNA extraction, modern gene editing, and cloning technology. The project's first major hurdle was obtaining usable DNA from dire wolf remains. Initial attempts in 2021 yielded only fragments, not nearly enough to map the genome in detail. Without a comprehensive genetic blueprint, the team couldn't identify which specific genes to modify in modern gray wolves. Enter Beth Shapiro, an ancient DNA expert currently on sabbatical from UC Santa Cruz to serve as Colossal's chief science officer. Shapiro went old school, literally. She visited museums and got permission to sample a 72,000-year-old skull from the Idaho Museum of Natural History, and even drilled into a 13,000-year-old tooth herself. These new samples yielded much more complete DNA, allowing the team to create a detailed gene map of the dire wolf. They identified about 80 genes where dire wolves differed most significantly from modern gray wolves. This gave them their target list for genetic modification. Using CRISPR base editing technology, Colossal scientists modified blood cells from gray wolves, focusing mainly on genetic enhancers, regions that control how strongly certain genes are expressed. These modifications could potentially influence size, skull shape, and other physical characteristics. But here's where it gets interesting, or controversial depending on your perspective. That striking white coat? It wasn't actually based on precise dire wolf DNA evidence. Instead, the team disabled 2 genes entirely, a shortcut known to produce light fur in dogs and other species. This decision created dramatically photogenic animals, but paleontologists studying dire wolf fossils have questioned whether these extinct predators would have been white at all, especially since they thrived in non-snowy regions like prehistoric Los Angeles. After the genetic modifications, the team used cloning techniques. They transferred 40 to 50 cloned embryos into 6 surrogate dogs, resulting in 3 pregnancies and ultimately 3 surviving animals that now roam a secure 2,000-acre preserve. Despite the flashy announcement and striking photos, the scientific community isn't exactly rolling out the red carpet for these resurrected dire wolves. In fact, many experts are questioning whether Colossal's claims amount to scientific breakthrough or clever marketing. I would say such an animal is not a dire wolf, and it's not correct to say dire wolves have been brought back from extinction. It's a modified gray wolf, says Anders Bergstrom, a professor specializing in canine evolution at the University of East Anglia. 20 changes is not nearly enough, but it could get you a strange-looking gray wolf. Here's the fundamental problem. Dire wolves and gray wolves separated evolutionarily about 4 to 5 million years ago. While they share more than 99.9% of their DNA like humans do with chimpanzees, those small differences represent millions of genetic letters. Scientists like Bergstrom believe that truly recreating a dire wolf would require hundreds or thousands of genetic changes, not just 20. Even Beth Shapiro, Colossal's own CSO, seems to acknowledge the philosophical debate. What we're going to have here is a philosophical argument about whether we should call it a dire wolf or call it something else. When pressed directly, she hesitated before claiming, "It is a dire wolf, but it's not a gray wolf. It doesn't look like a gray wolf." Paleontologist Marin Belisi, who studies dire wolf fossils, specifically questioned the white coat decision. A white coat might make sense if you are in a snowy landscape, but one of the places where dire wolves were most abundant was around Los Angeles and the tar pits. And it was not a snowy landscape even in the Ice Age. I am just confused by the declaration that dire wolves are back. This controversy highlights a deeper scientific question about what makes a species distinct. Is it a small number of critical genes with big effects, or thousands of small differences accumulating over millions of years of evolution? And most importantly, can we truly claim to resurrect an extinct species when we've only approximated a few visible traits, while potentially missing countless behavioral and physiological adaptations? Let's talk about these wolves themselves. Currently, Romulus, Remus, and Khaleesi roam freely within their 2,000-acre preserve, protected from the outside world by that 9-foot fence. They don't wear radio collars, but they're constantly monitored by cameras and trained to approach their caretakers for feeding, which conveniently allows staff to weigh them as they cross hidden scales. The 10 staff members dedicated to these animals can observe them up close, though they're now too large to handle directly as they could when they were puppies. And while these white wolves certainly make for striking imagery, their future remains as unclear as their taxonomic classification. Lamb insists Colossal isn't trying to profit directly from these animals. "We're not making money off the dire wolves. That's not our business plan." He's also stated they won't be displayed to the public since we're not in the business of attractions. But that's where things get interesting. Every aspect of the project has been filmed, and Colossal recently signed a deal to produce a documentary series about their work. They've even hired a Hollywood executive previously involved with monster movies as their marketing chief. These business moves suggest that while the wolves themselves might not be displayed in a traditional zoo setting, their images and story will be heavily commercialized through media. It's a 21st century approach to displaying exotic animals, not through physical exhibition but through content creation. The company is already experiencing the downside of viral fame. Their recent announcement of woolly mice engineered with shaggy mammoth-like hair, quickly led to unauthorized merchandise sales and security concerns, with some people actually showing up at their labs hoping to see or obtain these animals. This explains the extreme secrecy surrounding the wolves' location. Lamb has admitted that diagrams of the preserve provided to media have been deliberately altered to prevent internet sleuths from determining its location, particularly given the potential interest from passionate Game of Thrones fans. So while these animals might represent a fascinating scientific achievement, their most immediate purpose appears to be generating publicity, content, and perhaps indirectly supporting Colossal's other de-extinction efforts through increased investment and public interest. What do you think? Real dire wolves or just white-gray wolves with great marketing? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this deep dive fascinating, hit subscribe and the notification bell for more videos on biotechnology breakthroughs that blur science fiction and reality. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.